In this generation of students, there is a visible absence of critical thinking skills. High school students are not being taught how to critically think because there is too high importance put on learning a particular curriculum and passing exams rather than a focus on the process of learning.
Therefore, it is hard for teachers to focus on developing these problem-solving skills in students and leaves little time or motivation for students to learn them.
I would define critical thinking as the ability to thoughtfully evaluate information and to make informed decisions.
I would define critical thinking as the process of evaluating information based on data that you're provided with and then coming to a logical conclusion about it.
I would define critical thinking as a way of processing, analyzing, and questioning information that is given to us and viewing it from a critical lens instead of just absorbing any information that's given to us.
As a future teacher, critical thinking is important to me because it is essential for teachers to guide students to develop problem-solving skills and to make informed judgments in the classroom and in everyday life.
It's important for me as a future teacher for my students to develop critical thinking skills because they need to be able to think for themselves. Most of the time, we're not given direct instructions or direct answers, so we need to be able to think independently to figure out problems.
I think teaching critical thinking should be a priority because as educators, we shouldn't just be focused on prepping our students for exams, but also focusing on giving them life skills that they can take with them after they graduate to help them be as successful as possible.
When talking about critical thinking in an educational environment, we can either look at it from a general or specific domain perspective.
Domain generality in the context of critical thinking refers to skills that once developed can be applied across many different domains to many different situations.
Domain specificity refers to a set of critical thinking skills that are only applicable to a specific domain.
Students in my high school science classroom would use critical thinking skills when analyzing experimental data and evaluating reliable sources. It would ensure they develop a deep understanding of scientific concepts and fosters a scientific mindset.
In math, learning the process behind the concepts and the theorems and how to apply them to different situations and different problems is arguably the most important part for success. Since all problems are different in some way, if the students focus on learning the critical thinking skills that are used throughout a problem to look at the data, evaluate it, and then apply different methods to solve the problem, they'll be more successful because they'll learn the process behind it instead of just memorizing the answer, and they'll be able to complete many different problems instead of just the one.
Due to the large number of sources and data we have in social studies, it is important for students to be able to compare and contrast all the different findings and perspectives from different points of view in history to get a better full understanding. It is easy to find the first article on your topic and to run with it, but it is important to know how to find accurate sources and to see history from all kinds of lenses.
Critical thinking is an essential skill in the workforce. If your boss gives you a task you've never done before, what are you going to do to figure it out? You must use critical thinking skills to evaluate what you are given and come up with a logical solution on what to do next with that information.
Let's say you're scrolling on Instagram and you see some big news come up. Is it from a reliable source? Is this a logical thing to have happened? You can use your critical thinking skills to observe what you're seeing, analyze what it means, and come to a conclusion whether or not this news is true or even likely to have happened at all.
I would teach critical thinking by engaging students in hands-on experiments, encouraging open-ended questions, and promoting discussions that challenge their assumptions and encourage evidence-based reasoning. I would also provide opportunities for independent research. I believe these would all improve their critical thinking skills, inside and outside the classroom.
I would teach this by explaining not only the steps of going through a problem, but the reasoning behind why I'm choosing to do that step and how it applies to this specific problem. An example of this would be showing my students all the data that we're given and then all the possible equations that we could use. Then we would evaluate which equations make the most sense in that context and especially which ones don't work and why.
For me personally, in a history context, I would teach it by giving my students guiding questions that help them explore different primary sources. I could easily explain them and translate them into language that's more simple, that they would understand, but that would not be encouraging them to use their previous knowledge or just their brain power. By providing guiding questions or making activities with the primary sources, the students will realize that with patience and using their brain, they can actually figure it out themselves. Not everything needs to be rushed, and information is not always going to be at your fingertips.
We believe that critical thinking is of primary importance to all teachers and students because it's a basic life skill that is not only helpful for school, but in all aspects of life.